after the judgment, currently we do have a team of operators as well as our legal services looking and working on a process. By tomorrow, which is Friday, by end of business, at least we will have a directive going out to the provinces as to how should they deal with the process. And also, Honorable Chair, to say, I don't think the Constitutional Court judgment, there is a confusion with the Constitutional Court judgment. I don't think there is. If there is, maybe, well, we are not aware of. There is a judgment that has been passed. I think it was about the validity of certain sections of the Constitution, which the court then said those sections are not unconstitutional. So, meaning then it's a judgment, I think, that is clear. So, and the judge, I think, went further to say he doesn't expect that we are going to run around people and arresting people for illegal possession. The question asked by Honorable Molebatsi, that if you are in possession of a firearm license, which now the license have expired, are you going to be arrested? I think in the judgment it is said that no, they don't expect us as SAPS to do that. So, and indeed, yes, we're not going to arrest anybody. We are in the process of outlining a process. What is known now, I think, to everybody and members of the public is that those people that are in possession of firearm licenses, that are in possession of firearms which were licensed, but which have expired as of now, those firearms, they are actually illegally possessing them. But it doesn't mean we are going to arrest them. We are working on a process where you're going to say, well, this firearm be handed over, and from there we will chart the way process, the process way forward. And I think the law is clear as to what should happen. The process internally, how we are going to deal with that. The 9 provinces were for the last 3 days had a meeting at head office where we're clearing out all those processes. And, well, we are not aware of where members of the public were chased away from the police station. But once we have cleared the process, there will never be such. And, of course, if members of the public, they are handing in their firearms, there will be no problem. But also, Chairperson, remember, this process, this court judgment, have got nothing to do with amnesty. It's 2 processes. They are not mixed. They are not related at all. So the process of amnesty is still on the go, as we are all aware. We are still pursuing that. But it is not related to this one. Maybe for other legally issues, but I can ask Colonel Van Liel, he's an expert in the field. He can just make some comments on that. Colonel.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I think as the National Commissioner indicated, and as General Smola said, we were in Pretoria now for 3 days, in consultation with our legal services, and I don't want to preempt it at this stage, so there's a lot still behind the scenes to do. We're dealing with where there are concerns raised in the various provinces, where there are complaints, and we got our own internal things out to say, look, we must receive these firearms, but I think by tomorrow afternoon, everything will be clear in consultation with our legal services. So to discuss a lot of the things, what are we going to do, how things are going to work, it's a bit premature at this stage. But by tomorrow, it will be out, as the General indicated.
National Commissioner.
Yeah, thanks very much, Honourable Chair. The directive I've given has been that the circular must be out not later than tomorrow afternoon because of the urgency of the matter. In actual fact, the assurance that I've also got from General Masemula is that that circular could be issued by this afternoon, but my deadline not later than tomorrow. And then secondly, Chair, I think I would like to propose that our approach should also be guided by one of the 7 logics of philosophy: make peace with the past so as it doesn't spoil your present. we don't want to handle this process from a defensive mode because it might make members negative. I want to appeal for a positive spirit towards the court judgment. And we've been here to the portfolio committee with firearm stakeholders. We had a good relationship before, we still have it. So we are going to handle this matter with care. While we will be guided by the legal process, we'll still be open for inputs and engagement, especially from the side of the portfolio committee, because the portfolio committee will play a middle ground. And we will also still engage with stakeholders. One of the other things we want to do is just to improve the communication so that if we issue directives and say, this is what we're gonna do during this time, then we appeal for cooperation for everyone during that particular period. And we are also aware of the current situation, the level of fear of the communities. We are going to treat this matter with the agency that it deserves. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We will now go to questions. The first few from my side. Some of the principles that we discussed during the various amnesty applications in terms of safe storage is still relevant, very much relevant. Now, there's 3 police stations, Bellville South, Isipingu, and 1 in Mpumalanga that was excluded from that list. Can we get an undertaking or assurance from the National Commissioner that stations where there was, like in those 3 cases, big problems, they will be excluded from the process, and then also DFOs without the necessary vetting? It's going to be, again, highly problematic. If high-risk stations with DFOs who hasn't been vetted, and where the storage facilities, and especially the Article 13 stores are not in good state, it's not going to work. So the audit teams that was foreseen and the verification teams in the other process, will this be part of the rollout? Because the dilemma is, if you bring now, say, potentially 200 to 400,000 new firearms into the system, the potential for leakage and collusion is very, very high. I mean, we saw the arrest by SAPS of the 3 members of the flying squad in Germiston. The National Commission indicated the 1 lady in Limpopo who was part of the CIT team. So there is also that element in SAPS. So we want assurance that there will be extraordinary measures in terms of control. What's going to be the role also of your cluster commanders? If we can just have those answers, is Honourable Kolobana, Honourable Mulabatsi, Honourable Groenewald.
Yeah, again to the National Commissioner, he didn't refer at all to the proposed Section 21, which would enable owners to keep the firearm locked away, not use it, but have the permit until such time as the license can be processed. That seems to me to be eminently sensible. Could I have your input on that, please?
Honourable Mulabatsi, Honourable Groenewald, Honourable Mbe.
Thank you, Chair. To me, the duties of the DFOs are overloaded. I'm thinking, is there a way you can consider reviewing their duties? Because if they must do second-hand liquor license and firearm licensing, to me it sounds a lot already. And maybe that's the reason why we have a lot of applications that are not being processed timelessly. Can you maybe look at reviewing it? Thanks, Chair.
Honourable Mulabatsi, Honourable Groenewald, and then Honourable.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, now, firstly, I want to say that I welcome the fact that the Commissioner said that they will also consult with the stakeholders. I mean, that is also quite important, that they exactly also know, because they are the people who have the members, and the members are asking the questions to them, and I hope that will even happen this afternoon or tomorrow, that they have those consultation with them, that there's quite clarity. Secondly, Chairperson, I also want to say that I presume that we will get a copy of the directive that is going out, because the people are also asking us what the procedure is. Just to give you an indication, Commissioner, it's Thursday on Tuesday in my hometown in Stilfontein. When somebody went there, they said the DFO won't be available for the next 6 weeks. And nobody else wants to get involved with the issue, because it's only the DFO that the station says.
Well, that's the latest there on that briefing to Parliament by the South African Police Services, and looking there at General Fani Masemola laying out the processes that they will be following, but also the national.
There's quite a lot of confusion, and I would also ask the police to communicate it clear to the public what the process is going to be. I personally think that and you've mentioned, Honourable Chair, that all the other problems with storage and everything, like we know that's a big concern. And can I also say that is also quite a big concern for firearm owners? I mean, I get people to say, well, how do I know that if I'm going to hand in my firearm, that it's not going to use in a crime? Unfortunately, whether we want to know it or not, that is the perception of the public. And I personally think the way to handle this situation, and I know the amnesty process is something different from this, although I do believe that that is a solution. Also, for the people to come forward, they will have more confidence, because we know, Chairperson, and we had those discussions, criminals don't hand in their firearms. In fact, they welcome if there's things like amnesty, because then maybe they can get more firearms. But for the public, that if we have the amnesty period, I am sure there will be more confidence from the public or the firearm owners. And of course, we know that the moment you have amnesty, there is a certain process where people can go through to try to get the firearms back again. So I would ask the Commissioner so that we can speed up that specific process of, if he can give us an indication, and I know, or even from your side, Chairperson, you can also give us an indication as far as the amnesty process is concerned. I see the Chairperson is shaking his head. Commissioner, what he wants to say is waiting for the police, so let's hear from the police.
Thank you, Honourable Groenewald, Honourable Mula, and then Honourable Kalabana, and I think Honourable Bele, you also, first Honourable Bele, yes.
Thank you, Chairperson. General, what happens to the stations that don't have DFOs? Who's going to do the work? Because I remember last time when we have an oversight in the Free State, there were stations that were having no DFOs, and there was a lot of stations. I don't know if you did deploy those DFOs in the stations. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Mula, Honourable Bele, and then Honourable Kalabana.
Thanks, Chairperson. I also would like to welcome the assurances and the demeanor of a positive spirit from the SAPS top brass on this issue. I think it will calm a lot of anxiety out there, and tomorrow's announcement will then provide the clarity. I think the angle I just wanted to bring in, given that we're talking about the path forward, is to remind everyone present that you have to remember that all the stakeholders in the firearm ownership sector, from your hunters to the shooting clubs to the arms and ammunitions dealers, all have a vested interest in having a competent and efficient system in this environment, and they all have a vested interest in upholding the reputation of firearms owners. Given the general stigma that exists out there around firearms and firearm ownership, especially as it links to gun violence, both in the criminal sort of gang context as well as in the domestic violence context, however instrumentalized and distorted some of that has been. So they want to help. They want to make sure that the system works. And so to take a lead from the Commissioner's exhortation that things move forward in a positive spirit, I would like to ask and encourage that there be a partnership approach with the stakeholders. If, for example, as parts of the short-term interim period and even going forward, to consider, for example, the fact that the arms dealers, the shooting clubs, many of them will probably tend to have more secure storage facilities on average compared to many police stations, because the last thing they want is news to start going out and for things to happen where the storage facilities of a shooting club is raided and firearms stolen, as happens more regularly with police stations and with SANDF bases. So they want to cover themselves as much as possible. So you can leverage that capacity, you can leverage that infrastructure and that network. And I think if the consultation and the collaboration happens as is indicated will be the case, please use the full spectrum of stakeholders and people who want to make the system work. And don't feel that you have to do it all by yourself, given that we know there's constrained capacity. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to say we've had two references from two different provinces. I will speak about KZN, where I was sent from various stations to eventually found one with a DFO who was away and had to go back, and then found I had to make an appointment. People now making appointments, they maybe can go in for their applications in 3 months, 4 months is the backlog. That's just to apply for a license, to apply for a renewal. So please consider very carefully what we're saying here. I don't want to see, I have been far too often to the Central Firearm Registry. I'm sure you have too. I'm sure if you had hair, you'd pull it out. I couldn't believe how SAPS members have to work, that they even have to enter that building is disgusting. It is chaos. We know that. We can't see the SAPS have this tidal wave of what were, until a week ago, legal firearms, land there for storage, and then the applications go through, and then they go to collect them, and then some are missing, and some are gone, and there's a problem, and there are issues, 400,000 times of that. So I'm hoping your solution is a very elegant one, and that, yeah, please make sure, I agree with Honourable Groenewald, we have got to get your missive, release, whatever it's going to be tomorrow or the late this afternoon, explaining to people who will initially be very relieved that they're not going to promptly be, you're not go rushing out to arrest 400,000 people, but they need to know what the process is. And I go back to section 21 over and over, raised in the court case, just seems the best solution all round. Thank you.
Any other member? Honourable Groenewald, Honourable Bula? Only Honourable Groenewald, you will be the last then.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask, and I just want to make sure whether we share the same view. I mean, we have the Concord case now, we have the amnesty, it's a separate issue, but another separate issue is the old, they call it the green license. That was a court case in 2009, and I just want to make sure whether the Commissioner agree with me that as far as that is concerned, that court case is still as it is. I see the General is shaking his hand. So, yeah, you're confirming it, because saying that that is still valid. The old green license is still valid, so that the people, of course, of the procedures, if they did apply in the new act, of course, we know that situation, but I just want to get confirmation, because I also get quite a lot of questions on that specific issue. So the whole idea, Chairperson, is just to get clarity so that the people know what is going on. Thank you.
Very much, members. We'll give then the National Commission and his team opportunity to respond.
Thanks, Honorable Chair. I think what we would like to promise the committee is that we are on stabilization. So there won't be people that we are top priority that we're going to arrest are the highest criminals and not ordinary loyal citizens. And Chair, the observation that has been made by the chair with regard to the audit teams, the storage, I also included security of those particular stations. Maybe what I would then need to relate to the committee is that we're going to treat this matter as a special project. And we're going to confine it to a scope. And what would be included in the scope is the feasible part that will enable us to deal with and dispose of the subject effectively so. Areas that are not part of the state of readiness, we're gonna treat them as such and set them aside. Because the moment we take charge of those firearms, we agree they must be safe and they must not be involved in any crime. None of them must get lost. So over and above the audit teams, which will be part of the special project plan, and looking at the safe storages under the control of SAPS, and the security of those police stations, which will be taking charge of these firearms. That will be part of the special project. So I confirm your observation, Chair. Then the cluster commanders, they will be given a clear directive within the project deliverable description. The monitoring, the enforcement, and the performance management system will also be clearly tied up to their performance agreements for the duration of the project, so that everyone is clear what is the expectation and from them. The consideration of the section 21, it has been thrown into the current legal process, which will be captured as part and parcel of the directive which will be issued. It's not the only input. Maybe I might just need to disclose as well that our engagement with regard to this matter started yesterday already. I think after the committee meeting, I had to meet with some of the firearm stakeholders together with General Masimo. That's where we said, while there's a legal analysis based on the judgment and as well as the guidance as to how the execution will go about, we are not throwing away inputs. Those inputs that will support the effective execution of this particular project, we're going to incorporate them. But we are not going to try to change the judgment because we don't have the competence to do that. And we're also not going to apply the discretion. So maybe it's just also important as well to say that engagement has already started. The firearm stakeholders are already coming out. We're not chasing them away. Then the question of the DFOs, it's going to be frontline in the project because all the stations that will be taking charge of these firearms, they will need to have competent DFOs. But over and above the DFOs at the stations, I think General Masemula will also have to look out for other DFO capacity that might no longer be in the DFO environment, including people who might have been transferred or promoted out of the environment, because they will just need to beef up the project capacity so that we make sure that when the firearm owners come out, they receive the necessary attention. So I think we're going to beef up the project plan to maximum. That will include the stations that do not have DFOs, because the committee is also aware that we are also driving together with the stabilization, the migration of resources. So we will also be prioritizing the stations that do not have DFOs. The directive, it's transparent. I think we can make it available. It doesn't have any operational implications. We will also appreciate the support from members of the committee, because I'm sure the purpose of the directive is also to support or assist us to enhance the process. Then I think the question of DFO staying away, one is a question of absence management, which is our daily responsibility, but it's also a disciplinary issue. I'm sure we will enforce the true discipline, and we will identify those particular stations, because before someone can be given leave, we will need to make sure that the function continues while this person is away, and it's a critical function. We will rather have, if we do not have a capacity at that station, we would rather have to move any other capacity from either a nearby station or where there is. Let me say that for the duration of the project term, because we will not be able to afford a situation where there will be no DFO at the police station. So we will also be addressing it through the project. I think the last one is on the amnesty. The green license, I would like to confirm the general's head. So, and I will not explain it further. Then the amnesty, the minister has pronounced on the amnesty before the judgment, which then means the amnesty proposal that the minister is looking at the present moment, it excludes the judgment. If there would be any consideration for amnesty which impact on the judgment, it could as well mean that then the minister will have to make a decision on an addendum that can then talk to it. But at the present moment, it's not yet. And after the analysis, we're still going to brief the minister fully. And also in terms of the directives, then we will also hear what is the direction of the minister. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, I want to close now the subject. We must go to the business of the day. Is it an urgent matter?
Okay, so what I'm reading out of this is there's no option. Those 400,000 people must go and hand their firearm to a station and get a piece of paper saying their firearm is there, and then apply for a license and then go back and collect the firearm. Could you give me an indication of the time span it would take for a person who's handing in a firearm and applying? Obviously, they have to do their competency certificate, but let us say your DFO is booked up for 2 months and they can get an appointment and they get that. How long these days is a license going to take? I mean, it used to be 40 years. It used to take, by the time you got your little card, you had to apply for the next one. So what can we tell people will be the duration? Thank you.
Right, thank you. That's the last member on this subject. We want to move on. General Masemola, you're welcome. Thank you, National Commissioner.
Thanks, Honourable Chair and members. I think this matter we will do everything and all what is legal. We will not go beyond anything that is not within the law. And I think the committee, the honorable committee and honorable members, as we are aware and affair with the law, we won't go beyond what the law says we should do. And also, I think also you don't be correct, Honorable Chair, that we take concessions that might be in contravention of the law. So I think that we also have to, I think the committee is here to guide us. So we can't be taking concessions that are in contravention with the law. It will be a problem as we go out there, and it will be a perception to the public that no, maybe the police now are going to do 1, 2, 3. Then we might be seen to say, well, there is a constitutional court judgment, and again, the committee will come and say, police, you are going the other way around of the constitutional court judgment. Can I give the kernel again, just to touch section 21 and so on? Thanks, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, General, I must just indicate the committee supports the Constitutional Court ruling. I mean, we must abide by that. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if that was in relation to my question. I simply asked how long it would take for a person to get a license if they handed it in today. I don't know what the delay times are today. I wasn't asking for any special concession at all. I mean, I wouldn't do that. And I don't know why it's being implied.
Right, Colonel, thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. As the General was saying, the Concord ruling is that lapsed, you don't have a valid license, you're illegal possession. And if you read through the court judgment, it only entertained the constitutionality of the 2 different sections. And it did not extend to comment on any other issues because they couldn't deal with it. And this is why we have to go look to see, as the General was saying, not to criminalize this, but we have to adhere to the Constitutional Court decision. And you cannot implement anything or do anything that is contrary to legislation. So being in illegal possession, the person has to go look, and this is why we were sitting till late night to see how do we get around this as being the law enforcement agency to make this legal to be within the parameters of that, and it's very difficult. So this is the things that we're looking at. We're sitting with the Constitutional Court ruling, which is very clear. So we have to deal with it, as the General was saying.
General Sitole?
Yeah, Honorable Chair, maybe to try and come closer to the expectations of the committee. The project plan will take off now, and I'm going to give it 2 review timeframes, which will be 3 months, then again 6 months. So in this year, operationally, there's going to be 2 quarterly reviews where they will be giving progress to me. I wanted to propose to the committee that we then update the committee on quarterly basis about the progress, or at any other period as the committee will deem fit. But then we will deal with how we speed up the processes within the project. And as they come and present to me, I will then be able to give instructions within the project based on timeframes. But for now, we can update the committee quarterly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, National Commissioner. I think what is critical that there must be proper communication from the police's side in terms also of the SOP that's going to be issued. Communication with the public is critical, and we'll late August then invite again the management specifically on that issue. Thank you very much.
I must say, I didn't get an answer. I asked a simple question. If a person goes in today, hands in the firearm and applies for a license, how long would it take? Right now, what are the systems like? Will it take a month, 2 months, 6 months? That's all I asked for.
Let's get that response. Thank you, General Masemola.
Thanks. There's not a time frame, you know, that you renew, you have to apply before 90 days and so on. But currently, the question by the honorable member to say if you now take a firearm that the license have lapsed, which there is this court judgment now, you take it to a police station, you hand it over as an illegal firearm. There is no, currently, there is no rule that says apply for a license for that firearm. I think that's what the Colonel also explained. That's the position. Thanks.
Right, thank you very much. Members, we will now go to item 2, briefing to the Portfolio Committee on Police on the contract management and procurement processes within the SAPS. General Sitole.
Thanks very much, Honorable Chair. I think our first presentation, it's going to be in terms of the procurement process, and that presentation will be led by Lieutenant General Mokoena. Thank you.
Thank you, General Mokoena. You're welcome.
Section 1, we're going to look at the organigram. We'll look at the organigram, procurement and contract management, which consists of regulatory framework associated with the procurement process, procurement delegations, procurement transparency in the SAPS, detailed and schematic breakdown of the procurement process, practical application of the procurement process, managing of contracts, ICT procurement, building projects, risk and risk mitigation, communication with provincial and divisional procurement practitioners, irregular expenditure, and the double PGM office. Section 2 will look at the definitions, categories of contracts, regulatory framework, purpose, situational analysis, key focus areas, risk management, implementation, monitoring and reporting, National Commissioner's turnaround strategy. Now, section 1, that is now the procurement process. Now, we have a component that handles a procurement in the police nationally.
Just a moment, General.
Yes.
I just appeal to members of the public that while the Portfolio Committee is on, as well as the speakers at the podium, to please respect that. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Now, nationally, we will have a component that handles all procurement in the department, which is led by a component head at the level of Major General. And we have under him procurement management, which is movable government property and services. Then you will have procurement management, facilities. Then you will have a procurement management that is contracts. That is the management of contracts, of all the contracts, whether it be departmental contracts or transversal contracts. Now, on the following slide, you will see there, page 2, you have 2 legs that handles contracts, basically facility contracts and contracts that deals with movable government property. Next slide, page 3. All procurement actions in the South African Police Service are governed by legislations and prescriptions, which includes, amongst others, the following: the South African Police Service Act, Act number 68 of 1995, Section 205 and Section 217 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, Act number 108 of 1996, the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act, Act number 5 of 2000, and regulations issued from time to time. 2017-0401 is the latest one. The Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment, Act number 53 of 2003, the PFMA, of which all of us were conversant with, the State Information Technology Agency, that is the SITA Act, Act number 88 of 1998. National Treasury instruction notes and circulars which are issued from time to time. Lastly, we have the South African Police Service User Manual Directive in respect of acquisition. Basically, this is where our AG and our internal audit are auditing the division supply chain management on. Page 4, we're looking at the Construction Industrial Development Board, that is the CIDB. This is a policy that governs the construction industry or the built environment. Joint Building Contracts Committee, that is the JBCC. Prevention and Combating of Crime Activities Act, Public Administration Management Act, Prevention of Organized Crime Act, Companies Act, Safety, Health, Environment, and Quality. National procurement. All procurement approvals above the 300,000 are finalized at national supply chain management level. All requirements for bids above 500,000 are finalized and approved at national level by the bid adjudication committee.
So there's just for clarification, so there is at that stage of the second tier no national treasury involvement.
No national treasury involvement. Maybe if I can just, if you allow me, Chair, to just go a bit deeper. All provinces and divisions are given a threshold value up to 300,000 in terms of inviting quotes. Anything above that, but less than 500,000, the procurement authority must be obtained at supply chain management at national, meaning their delegation is limited to up to 299 in terms of quotation. The moment it reaches 300,000, the procurement authority must be obtained from national supply chain management. But all the requirements which are above 500,000 must follow the bidding process, must be advertised and follow the bidding process. But you will find in some instances where we participate in transversal contract, which is negotiated, advertised, adjudicated, and awarded by National Treasury, which we are participants thereof. That is managed by Treasury. May I proceed, Chair?
That means all CETA contracts will, for that purpose, then there will be Treasury involvement.
Yes,
if they go above the threshold.
Yes, definitely. All, may I just say this, Chair? All the ICT and IT-related requirements are handled through CETA. From SAPS, we hand them over to CETA, and there will be a collaboration between CETA and National Treasury. Right?
So the final go-ahead will be, say, in practice, be by National Treasury.
Come again, Chair?
The final go-ahead
will be the National Treasury.
In terms of the current system?
In terms of the current system, if it's a transversal contract, not a departmental. Okay. The final say rests with the National Department of Treasury. Provincial and divisional procurement. Provincial and divisional procurement officers have been delegated to finalize all procurement actions up to the threshold value of 300,000. Quotation in excess of this threshold value must be forwarded to national supply chain management, like I indicated.
Example of that, because we want to become practical. So, for instance, the police station in Kobo, yes. That quotation that was sourced by the Provincial Commission in the Eastern Cape, that will fall under that 300,000. So it was too locally. So that will be.
Yeah, it will be handled locally, finalized locally. Okay. Compliance to National Treasury prescripts. The South African Police Service submits procurement plan approved by the National Commissioner for Publication. Thereafter, deviations, expansions, and other feedbacks are sent quarterly, which is also measured through the MPET by the Department of Performance Management and Evaluations. Deviations for quotations above the threshold value of 1 million are reported to National Treasury. Technological reforms, that is tender portal, central database, it's one of them. The South African Police Service also complies with the legal reforms such as the PPPFA, that is the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act, Act number 5 of 2000, Supply Chain Management Commercial Contract, Transversal Contract, that is as prescribed by law. This slide deals with the activities, if I may skip and go to the next one, because these are activities.
Can we maybe go to the deviations?
Yeah, okay.
I just want to maybe clarity. Say, for instance, because we had, for instance, the DNA board with us earlier this week and the whole issue of the DNA kits and shortages.
Yes.
Now, for instance, if you can't use one or two of the suppliers due to disqualification or problems, investigations, AG queries, COPA queries, what is your ability to source then other service providers in terms of the deviation, to ensure that the SAPS members and the stations get and have the necessary materials to... I just wonder if you can just explain that process to us.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Chair and members, to give me the opportunity to explain exactly what deviations implies and also what agency in terms of Treasury regulations implies. In a situation where we are now, there is a shortage of DNA countrywide because of the investigation that is being undertaken with regard to the manipulation previously of the system. Treasury grants us authority to utilize the agency delegation, which it can be of any amount because of the current situation. Now, as supply chain practitioners, we did follow that process, but in terms of the evaluation, like we're not scientists, it still have to be evaluated by the end user who are now scientists. They will be in a position to know exactly what DNA will be suitable for hair, for eyes, and so on, human tissues. Now, that we followed, only to find that the other company that was recommended is also under investigation. Then we deadlocked again. But what the National Commissioner has done, has instructed to advertise in all the newspaper. You will know, Chairperson and honorable members, we were only advertising in the government tender bulletin. What we are now doing, we are going to advertise in all national newspapers, government tender bulletin, and as far as possible, we are trying to find us from supply chain management, any company that deals with DNA to come and participate so as to, to go into details into this market. The reality is, Honorable Chair and members, when this issue of manipulation started, my observation is that the machines that were imported then are such that the current DNA that we were sourcing from these companies that are under investigation, they are the only ones that are competent. Now, in a long turnaround strategy, Chair, we need to sell those machines, because for as long as we have in those machines, Chair, we will not be able to honor the service that we owe to the public. But for current now, we are in a process of sourcing, as you know, exploring all the markets to say, come and participate, come and advise us, tell us how can we overcome the current situation. And that process is underway. Hopefully, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, that should be sorted out by next week, Friday. But we do have something in stock currently, but it's not enough. That is the reality of the situation. But in that case, through quotation, Honorable Chair, we can buy without following a bidding process because the situation is urgent and Treasury is granting us that delegation.
Only let's say the end user evaluation that's really holding up the process.
Yes, yes, that is where the challenge is.
Any members on this specific one? Or we can maybe later on the questions. Yeah, you can continue. Thank you, General, for that explanation. I think that's quite valuable.
I'll go to slide number 9. The requirement of DNA kits will be received together with the specification compiled by the end user, that is the Division Forensic Services, and the confirmation of funds by the South African Police Service Demand Management, and that is attached. The section Demand Management, together with the nominated representative from the end user Forensic Science Laboratories, will conduct a specification meeting to ensure the correctness of the specification. A certificate of unbiasedness and confidentiality is signed by all members involved. The requirement, together with the specification and confirmation of funds, will be forwarded to procurement for the activation of the procurement process. Permission will be obtained from the division SEM to proceed with the procurement process. That relates to the current one. Slide number 10. A pre-advertised meeting is Chair, I don't know, must I go also this another, activities here? Yeah, let me go to the higher level. Bit evaluation. Yeah. I think now we will come to contract management, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. And I will request our legal services now to take over from contract management, page number 12.
Thank you. General?
Yeah, thanks, Honorable Chair. Maybe just before legal services, that is just really important for us to bring to the attention of the committee that this is the first contract management strategy in the organization. We did not have one that is before. One of the reasons why we decided to have it was because of the analysis of the current situation in the organization, which we are also trying to turn around. But also, there has been some missing link in the integrated approach. I think the chair would also understand that there's certain contracts that we entered into at the expense of national security and other aspects. Hence, as we analyzed within, we saw the need for a contract management strategy so that it enhance and align to our procurement. But also, finally, we wanted to align contract management to the improvement of policing so that policing improve in the manner in which we apply contracts, then clean administration or procurement administration. Hence, as we present the strategy, we expect that there could be a lot of inputs or questions. But we're already on a preliminary, that is execution, which they will also be able to talk to it. What I've personally added to the strategy, which will not necessarily reflect in the current document, is the statement of intent which talks to the turnaround vision and moving forward, and the value statement, because we definitely has to share some values, and the two of those that I can quote upfront is service integrity. We need to reclaim the reputation of the organization. That is in the manner in which we're looking at contract management, but we also want our contract management practices to share the interest of the state and national security. So I think those are build-ups as we're moving forward. So with your permission, then we can allow legal services to take us through. Thank you.
National Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, honorable members. Before we proceed to what a contract management strategy is, we need to define a contract. A contract is an agreement entered into with the intention of creating legal obligations. And what is a contract management strategy? These are activities necessary to manage a contract from the moment a contract is signed up until termination. The SAPS deals with the following categories of contracts: departmental procurement contracts of goods, works, and services, transversal contracts, as the previous presenter alluded to in his slide 6 fully, Department of Public Works procurement model contracts. In the former presentation, it was fully alluded in slide 14. ICT IT procurement contracts in terms of the CETA Act, as we just discussed in slide 13 of the previous presentation. The regulatory framework also has been discussed fully in the procurement presentation, but even though we have dealt with above, what is of most important to contracts is Section 195 of the Constitution, which deals with values and the country's public administration. Section 205 of the Constitution is also very crucial to contracts because it determines the main function for the service. Section 217 of the Constitution also is crucial to contracts because it lays down requirements of public procurement in public environments, which must be effected in a fair, equitable, transparent, and competitive and cost-effective manner. In respect of Section 38, which has been captured in error there, it's supposed not to be of the Treasury regulations, but of the Public Performance Management Act. Public Finance Management Act, thank you. The accounting officer of a department must ensure that the department maintains effective, efficient, and transparent systems of financial and risk management and systems of internal audit, appropriate procurement and provisioning system which is fair and equitable, transparent, competitive, and cost-effective, as well as a system of properly evaluating all major capital projects. The purpose of the contract management is to, it aims to enhance the governance related to the management of contracts, to create a safe and secure, crime-free environment, as the National Commissioner alluded to, that is conducive for social economic stability in support of a better life for all, including the insurance of accountability for public funding through a clean and sound administration. The impact of the strategy will be to maximize a deliverance of a higher level of service to communities, which is also in terms of the National Commissioner's turnaround strategy to realize and enhance effective policing. The situation as it is that in SAPS, the contracts are managed by relevant business units within the organization, which are responsible for specific contracts. However, these contracts are not being properly managed effectively due to the following reasons. There is inefficient accountability at executive level. There is lack of consequence management. Leadership has ensured sufficient legislation, prescripts, and processes. However, the lack of a mechanism to deal with contracts has been a gap for a number of years. The current computerized contract management strategy is insufficient and inefficient to deal with technological and information changes. It is also a challenge to contract management, the issue of people movement, people that are qualified when they move to be employed in private sectors. This creates a skills gap, and these people that deal with contracts are stationed in different business units. So the workflow is carried out in different business units. And another challenge is that there is a dependency in other organizations, as we have alluded that in the SITA and the Department of Public Works. When there's changes in cost, there comes in a challenge in the management of the contracts in the costs that are unavoidable but not budgeted for, e.g. costs like VAT increases. However, in other contracts, most of the contracts that are drafted have allowances in terms of the law of contract to allow for reasonable fitting in of changes that are necessary. There is a lack of evaluation of the impact of the service or the product that the organization purchases as against the money that we have spent. The key performance areas that the contract management strategy is going to deal with is the establishment of a contract management inventory within the organization. And this will be done by developing a centralized contract management system, which will provide for early warning systems, alert management in respect of budgetary implications as against the expenditure of the organization, trend analysis spending, advancing practice, and how the organization is advancing the practice of economic upliftment in each contract. The key performance area that was identified is the identification and classification of contracts in terms of their risk and assessing the level of risk, the impact of the risk, the categories of the contracts that have been alluded above. And this will also include the type of the contract, the amount, and the responsibilities that will arise out of the contract. The uniform management of contracts has been developed through a national instruction which the National Commissioner has already approved in principle. This national instruction terms of reference have also been drafted, which he has also approved in principle. And this will deal with issues of strict compliance with demand management processes to align the contracts to strategic objectives of the organization, as well as alignment of enforcement of delegations of our authorities. The following key performance area will be the improvement of a contract management capacity and capability, which is going to be done through a work study investigation. In support of promoting of a clean and sound administration towards effective policing, the National Commissioner has already established a contract management committee, which he has already approved it, and it is chaired by a Deputy National Commissioner, Asset and Legal Management. And the terms of reference of this committee has also been drafted and finalized, and the National Commissioner has approved them in principle. Maybe to mention that this committee will be integrated in its functions. It will report to the senior executive forums of the organization. The audit committee and the risk committee will also form part of this committee. The following key performance area is that we will develop a separate communication strategy within the SAPS, but we want to make it visible here that the communication will be key, and this will include the creation and the education and to raise awareness, share best practices, have a web-enabled system, and conduct learning networks throughout the organization. In terms of the risk management of the contract of the strategy, the SAPS risk management approach requires that risk management be applied in respect of all business processes by the relevant line manager. And this is required through the risk management strategy. This also applies to all forms of contract management. Contract-related risk will be managed by the relevant contract owners. They will be risk assessed individually. A formalized risk management methodology will be followed, and a risk treatment plan will be utilized to monitor and identify the risks. And these risks will be subject to an audit which will provide reasonable assurance of the effectiveness of the treatment of the risks. And we will conduct related risk that will be included in the risk register of the organization.
But the slide, I presume, is all things that are going to be implemented. It's not currently in place. It's all
Yes.
future music.
Yes, this is the
Strategy, yeah. It's not the current situation. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. That's correct. However, we have established governance protocols related specifically to the management of risks at the moment. And this will be utilized in order to effect that the SAPS Risk Management Committee will assess the application of these risk processes to ensure that the key areas of the risk are appropriately managed. And the Risk Management Committee will report to the SAPS Audit Committee, which exercises an oversight over all governance processes in the organization. The Risk Management Committee reports to the Board of Commissioners as per King 4 report on corporate governance. Chair, a detailed implementation plan has already been developed, and the National Commissioner has approved it. That will be utilized in a phased-in approach. The implementation plan will also provide that if there are projects or programs that needs to be adopted in order to effect deliverables, such as the establishment of a centralized database, this will, and the capacitating of practitioners, procurement and legal. This will be done and as a project, and the committee, the project steering committee, will manage this project as and when they are identified. As aligned earlier in Key Performance Area 6, the National Commissioner has designated the Deputy National as a Commissioner Asset and Legal to manage for governance of the contract management framework, to manage these contracts. And the Board of Commissioners is the governing body of the SAPS. So this committee will form a subcommittee of the Board of Commissioners. And the committee, as referred in Key Performance Area, will ensure accountability and oversight. And as part of the members in this committee, I need to mention that the Chief Risk Officer, the Chief Audit Committee Executive, Audit Executive, the Divisional Commissioners from specific business units will be invited to attend on an ad hoc basis when the need arises by the National Commissioner or the Deputy National Commissioner in charge of the contracts. And the draft terms of reference, as I said, has already been approved by the National Commissioner. In respect of monitoring and reporting, the contract management strategy will be monitored continuously with the aim of timeously identifying risks and deviations and rectifying what those deviations are in terms of the impact of the deviations. The Contract Management Committee will monitor the implementation through quarterly reports, which will be linked to the annual performance plan. And this can be provided to the Board of Commissioners, the Executive Management Forum, the Senior Executive Forum, and the Deputy National Review, the Deputy National Commissioner's review sessions that will be done in quarterly review sessions. In terms of monitoring tools, in respect of the contract management strategy, the Deputy National Commissioner Asset and Legal will evaluate the success of the contract management strategy. And the strategy will be reviewed annually, and the Deputy National Commissioner will provide feedback to all senior managers. The evaluation of the impact of the strategy will be determined through review sessions, analysis of complaints against the police, as well as the central database trend analysis. The contract management strategy is related and linked to the sub-strategic plan and all plans in the organization, such as the National Crime Combating Strategy, the Resource Management Strategy, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Strategy, the Procurement Plan, the Capital Works Plan, the ICT Strategy, the Risk Management Strategy, and the Audit Plan. In support of the vision of the turnaround strategy, the contract management strategy is aligned to the medium-term expenditure framework and will be reviewed every 3 years or at the direction of the National Commissioner. That is the end of the strategy.
Thank you very much. General Sitole, anything to add?
Yeah, thanks, Honorable Chair. It's just to indicate the implementation plan. It's a quick win action plan responding to the current situation. So it's under implementation. Just also to point out there's gaps that we needed to close between the Deputy National Commissioners and the Divisional Commissioners. The users are the Divisional Commissioners, but there's been an accountability gap between the Divisional Commissioner and the Deputy National Commissioners. So we have also aligned performance management to close that particular gap so that deputy national commissioners are held accountable to me, and the divisional commissioners, they account to them. So just bringing them into the chain. The other aspect that we also looked at is that all contracts must respond to the modus operandi so that they can improve policing. And I would also be expecting the contract management strategy to produce a performance report, a contract performance report, so that we check as to which of the contracts are performing, which are those that are not performing, so that we can either discard them or dispose of them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, National Commissioner. Members, we will now go to questions. Maybe the first few from my side. The National Commissioner indicated in yesterday's engagement as well the issue of the lifestyle audits. If we can just get a confirmation of the bid committee members, what is the process there? Is that process underway? When can we expect a date in terms of completion? And then the whole issue, the lead time. If you detect problems in the procurement and contract environment, what is the responsibilities of your divisional commissioners and DNCs to deal with it? And I'm going to take now an example, and it's a letter, General, that was written to you by Judge Mogoro, dated 28 May. And I just want to quote from a letter on page 2. And it relates to the Division Forensic Science Services. And I quote, "On further investigation, it has transpired that the biology section of the Forensic Science Laboratory has been hamstrung by undue delays in the awarding and or renewal of maintenance contracts and the procurement of generic DNA consumables, including insufficient resources provided to the biology section, notably forensic DNA analysts and administration staff to perform the exhibit registrations and supporting functions to maintain the significant increase in samples submitted to the Forensic Science Laboratory. Maintenance contracts and DNA consumable contracts not timely facilitated and renewed by Division Supply Chain Management. Increased downtime of the DNA system and inadequate support by the State Information Agency. The net effect of these delays has been the partial collapse of the DNA system, preventing the analysis of DNA samples, providing courts with the forensic DNA reports and the verification of forensic DNA investigation leads. Moreover, the declining numbers of buccal sample kits at station level and at several stations, the depletion of buccal sample kits means that DNA samples are not being taken from persons arrested and charged for Schedule 9 offences. Now, this matter was already raised in December of last year. Now, I've listened to your strategy for future usage, but it's quite clear there is really a problem. And we want to know from your divisional National Commissioner, what is going to be the consequent management? Because if there is not kits at the stations, it affects the ability for the criminal justice system, and it's very serious. So from the committee side, we want assurances today. The third issue we also want to raise is what is the current position of the CFO of the SAPS? If the National Commissioner can just give us an indication. Is he in office? Is there any other situation? If he's not in office, who is the acting CFO of SAPS currently? Thank you. Honourable Mulabat.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Do all members of the bid committee have security clearance? And also, how is this bid committee constituted? My second question, what measures has the department put in place to facilitate the reporting of corruption in procurement and other aspects of the supply chain management. My third one, how many cases of corruption in the procurement process did the department investigate and successfully prosecute in the year under review? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Mulabachi. Honourable Mula.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for your presentation. Are all tenders published on the departmental website as per Treasury regulations? My second question, does the SABS have an appeal process where unsuccessful bidders feeling unfairly treated can request a review of the awarding of bids? My third question is, SABS, will you please explain the manner in which consequence management in terms of irregular expenditure is done by the PAC? My last question, does SABS have a SCM system in place that complies with the PPPFA and the SCM framework issued by the National Treasury? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honourable Mula. Honourable Mark.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just a comment first. I think this is one of the best things that could happen. I'm not sure whether other departments have got something of this nature. If one had worked in a government department before, you will clearly see that this is a beautiful strategy. And this reminds me in key performance area number 1, where alert management in relation to budget vice versa contract expenditure. In municipalities, a person gets a contract for 4 years. And then meaning that the budget within the department would be for that 4 years. And the contractor just decides to finish the contract within 2 years. And if you check, it means you haven't budgeted for 2 years, you've got to use money that you never budgeted for, and that takes you off the rail. Well, that was just a comment, and if every department could have a strategy like this, that would be the best. Just one question or just clarification, key performance area number 2, identification and classification of contracts. Just to understand, how do you classify these contracts? What does that mean? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honourable Markey. Honourable Mabija. Welcome, Honourable Ramatlakane. I'll give you some time just to acclimatise. We're busy with item 3 on the program. You're welcome. Honourable Mbele.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation. I think when dealing with subject matter of this nature, it's very easy to get lost in the technicalities and the jargon. But I think the National Commissioner made a key point in his sort of closing remarks after the formal presentation to say that the key thing is that supply chain management and procurements and contract processes have to be aligned to and responsive to the operational needs of the service. Because the great difficulty I've had for the last 4 years in this committee and it's not the first time I'm going to say this, because I normally say it at the time of the annual report, is that at the high level of the departments, everything looks dandy. You know, SAPS consistently does well in terms of maintaining low levels of irregular expenditure. The AG generally gives them a clean bill of health. In fact, the first time they had issues with the last financial year, it was because there was a confusion with CETA around laptops and, you know, ICT equipment, and therefore things were miscategorized and the paperwork just went awry. But generally, things look good on paper and at the high level. But then you go to the ground level, and my sometimes prolific oversight program takes me to a lot of police stations around the country, and you see a completely different picture. Under-resourcing, under-equipping, and almost a sense that operational officers on the ground, not everywhere, but in many places, and police stations have been left completely in the lurch. They've just been left out in the barren wastelands to fend for themselves. I get messages. There was one I was just reviewing now from a detective in a police station at the Cape Flats who've been asking and asking for vehicles. And in particular, they want unmarked vehicles because detectives need to be able to get around without drawing attention. And they just say, they just get dololo. Station commander in Durban as well, in a past visit, tells me the refrain seems to be, and you know, we hear it being said that, oh, the end users send their specs and it's all taken up. But what I hear from the ground is that when station commanders and other closer to the ground end users send their needs, the reply generally, and it is from provincial level, so I know there's levels to this thing, they get told there's no budget. But how can there be a determination of what the budget will be, and therefore whether or not there isn't available to respond to on-the-ground needs if you haven't heard from the people on the ground yet? So, you know, I see the flow charts, I see everything. That's the theory, Chair. That's not what's happening on the ground in many places. And so I think my very simple question, and it's more of a, not so much a, you know, I thought it was partly technical, is can somebody explain to me what happens and how does it happen that an entire system that is so regulated and has so much detail laid out as to how things should happen, how can it be that the entire system seems to be unresponsive to some very basic needs at station level? And I fully appreciate that, you know, national senior management cannot have their finger on the pulse across the hundreds of precincts in the country. And so it's about that chain of accountability and responsibility through provincial cluster and other levels. But there's major breakdowns in the way that information and resources, well, the way that information flows up and the way that resources then cascade down. And I just want to know what's going on. How does that happen? Is the senior management team fully au fait with the crisis out there, the morale issues, the you know, people are only hanging on because they want to get their pension. If they could, they would leave ASAP. And I've got to say, Chair, you know, our role as public reps is to bring to this platform and to this space what we hear from the public through oversights and through what they tell us. I'm sure the Chair gets the same amount of correspondence that we do, probably even more, because as the chairperson, the public perceives him to be able to do much more. So we know the complaints and the grievances and the problems that are brought to us from the public. I'm in Delft right now, but I'm not going to get into that. So I would just like to know, this is the key lever in the SAPS around managing resources and budgets and allocating and resourcing them in a way that is responsive to the needs on the ground. What, in very simple terms, is going wrong? And I hear the remedies being proposed, subcommittees of the BOC, fantastic. That's not going to solve the issue. It's about the nitty-gritty, day-to-day, step-by-step, and ensuring that the value chain follows through. So, yeah, if I can just ask for some, maybe it needs different language, but I need to understand that the SAPS management has got a firm grip on what needs to happen, what's wrong right now, and how they're going to fix it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honourable members, we're going to take now a 10 to 15 minutes tea break, and then we'll come back for further questions and then the responses from the National Commissioners team. Thank you very much. Honourable members, 2 minutes. 2 minutes, thank you. Thank you very much, honourable members. Thank you again, National Commission and your team. Honourable Molabatsi, you've indicated you've got just one additional question.
Thank you very much. Mine is on this deputy cluster commander. Why do we have it? I'll tell you why. A lot of work is being done at police station level. It's the station commanders that are overworked and not the cluster. So why don't they at least have deputies instead of this cluster commanders? What are the deputies for? Because to be honest, these cluster commanders,
Right, thank you very much. Any other member? Right, thank you very much, honourable members. We will then go directly to General Sitor and his team for the responses. Thank you, General.
Thanks very much, Honourable Chair. I think, Honourable Chair, the lifestyle audit, we will respond together with the vetting. And I would start with the directives that I have given. The procurement environment has been identified as one of the priority areas for lifestyle audit as a result of the current situation. The same applies to forensic. I then gave an instruction that CI must come up with a project plan to address them. And I instructed both of the environments to start working on information that is relating to it and the specific targeted people within the environment, those that they will start with, although all of them, they will have to be subjected to. I will therefore, with your permission, give first to General Mokwena to take the first response, and thereafter CI, which will be General Tsumane and General Kalaka. Thank you.
Thank you, National Commissioner. Yes.
Thanks, Honourable Chair and Honourable members. The members who does procurement and the members of the BAC, the Bid Adjudication Committee, has been fully vetted. That process has been completed. Now, beyond that, we have to now engage in a process of lifestyle audit. The requests have been submitted to CI and the detective, and the implementation thereof, I think it has already started. But then I would like to hear from the detectives and the CI, when will they, fully implement it?
Okay, General Tsumane.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and honourable members. Indeed, Chair, I think there's a process that we have undertaken in terms of the lifestyle audit. It's, I would say it's a three-pronged kind of an approach. If I have to explain to it is that, we, during our course of some kind of investigation or project-driven investigations, we will pick up some members that we're very interested in. And when we pick up these members that we're interested in that are sometimes our subjects, we will definitely start this kind of a process as part of our investigation. And that is being done as well. Over and above that, National Commissioner will also give his areas of interest and concerns in terms of the lifestyle audits. Part of those areas would be his leadership, senior leadership as well, that CI will also do and prioritize those that needs to be prioritized. And also will look into divisions and components and business units, for example, the procurement environment as well. These are some of the areas that we have to do. But because of the limited human resource that are engaged and the nature of this intensive kind of investigation and searching, it would always take time, but we normally prioritize this thing. I can just confirm that after the National Commissioner has given us an instruction, Chair, we are doing that as CI, and there's a project that we are busy with. And I can confirm that we have been given a chance to also to report to the senior management meetings on a weekly basis, and also in some of the executive kind of meetings that we normally have. So we are busy with that, though we are having very surmountable challenges that we are facing in terms of us expeditiously dealing with these matters, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Honorable Chair, thank you. Honorable members. Honorable Chair, I think the DNC crime detection was, his response was covering also what CI is doing as the DNC responsible for CI. So there's nothing much to add. Safe to say that in terms of the vetting, we have completed the environment, but then the lifestyle audit is a continuous process. But for now, we don't have a consolidated report to say how far we are, but we are continuing as the DNC already explained. Thank you, Chairperson.
We won't see members of the bid committee with Argentinian T-shirts in Moscow. Is that what you're saying?
You would see them in orange uniform, Chair. Chair, maybe, yeah, the last part of this, the beefing up of the lifestyle and vetting capacity is part of the CI turnaround. And they will be giving a full report on a quarterly basis. So if we are called to appear after the quarter, we will provide updated stats in terms of this. And then, Chair, the responsibility for divisional commissioners and as well as the DNCs, more specifically talking to the letter from Judge Mahoro. Maybe let me first explain the responsibility. I think both DIFCOMs as well as DNCs, they've got a Section 44 delegation in terms of fulfilling this responsibility. And firstly, that Section 44 is enforced through the performance management system. They are then held accountable and they've got a performance obligation. If for any reason they do not fulfill their Section 44 delegation, performance management consequence is invoked. Then further to that, they are further guided by Section 34 of the Public Finance Management Act as well as Section 81 If for any reason the organization suffers or suffer a loss as a result of their omission to carry their duties, then we invoked Section 81 and Section 81(2). We investigate a financial misconduct and where they may end up reimbursing the state on that particular loss. And should we undertake the performance consequence management, it will also automatically be followed by the disciplinary process in terms of the regulation. I think this is the status quo at the present moment, and they all sign this off into their performance contract. I have requested a meeting with Judge Mahoro, the board. The specific reason being that the matters that are outlined in their letter are also a subject of the current investigation. And as a result of them being the subject of this particular investigation, this could be a justifiable delay. But we are also going to discuss with them the alternatives, which has been explained by General Mokwena, to say we are moving the deviation way, which is provided for, but we're trying to stay within the prescripts as we enhance the process.
You know, the bottom line is, I mean, you're not going to have a situation where you run out of DNA kits, or SAPS won't be able actually to function in dealing with suspects. I mean, that's our concern, that you're going to have no break in the evidence chain, and we're sitting then with a crisis.
If we run out of DNA kits, Chair, these two will not be with us in the next appearance. And I told them. And I also told them before that I'm not going to appear before the committee unless I've got an assurance, and I give the assurance there that the DNA kits will be ordered. Hence, maybe the deadline that has been given by General Mokwena. If we've got an investigation, policing cannot suffer as a result. We will be pushing it so that by the Friday that we refer to, then we've got the new DNA kits. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, General, just to follow up on Honorable
The deadline being when?
It's next week, Friday. Yes. Oh, you can come in?
Thank you, Honorable Chair and honorable members. I think, with all respect, Honorable Chair and honorable members, I don't think we really understand the process here. Supply chain ensures the process of acquisition. We are dependent on forensic science to give us a legitimate supplier. Unless, if the committee says to me, approve, regardless of this company, whether it's under investigation or not, that I will do. No, but General, I think we need to communicate this with supply chain practitioners, and it should be understand where we start and where we stop. And I'm saying with respect, it cannot be said, supply chain, you must deliver, when the end user is the one who's supposed to give me a legitimate supply or service provider, then I will approve. But if they continue giving me companies that are under investigation, there's nothing I can do. Because if supply chain practitioners approve illegitimate, who are subject again of investigation, we will be in orange overalls. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, but I think, General, there was an assurance that you will ensure that there's proper DNA kits, and we presume you will do the necessary due diligence to ensure that you don't contract companies that are blacklisted or corrupt. We've got that assurance from the National Commissioner. So, yes, Honourable Abatsi.
Chair, I was getting agitated.
No, okay, Chair. Yeah, it's okay, Chair. I think we are one organization. Yes, and I'm the head of that organization. And the users who must give General Mkwena, the spec, and the suppliers, they account to me. So I've instructed all of them, including General Mkwena. And if I don't get the DNA kits, all of them will go. Yes. Chair, I will proceed to the current position of the CFO. I think Chair, he has been suspended. Unfortunately, there's a misconduct that he has committed in terms of the regulation, which warranted the suspension. So he's currently on suspension. I think he's been suspended together with General Shezi. There's a one matter they share, but also is another matter. But the committee will also know we've got this notorious last day financial year payment of 52 million, which was done in 5 hours. So I think presently, Chair, I have assigned the CFO functions to Lieutenant General Vuma. And she's got a previous background of finance and supply chain. I didn't want to take it a lower level down due to the level of responsibility and accountability, especially on the existing investigations. We will expedite the process, which will either clear him or dispose of his process otherwise, and then we'll then see to it that the CFO function is intact again. Thank you, Chair.
General, just on that one, we appreciate the assurances, but you're happy there's in terms also of the function of the DNC, the other functions that it's got, it won't, I mean, the workload, can we just get in, because the CFO of SAPS is more than a full-time position, the audit is also being finalized, so can we just get that assurance?
Yeah, in actual fact, Chair, we will still present the structural review in terms of the new turnaround approach. In the standard principle of structures in the public sector, supply chain and finance, they both under the CFO function. At the present moment, we have a DNC who's overseeing both. Yet in actual fact, the two are both CFO functions. Now, in terms of the structure that we're reviewing, we want to adapt to the DBSA principle of presenting or maybe designing structures. So if you take it in the light of that particular fact, the function of the CFO was only addressing the one leg, which is finance, but was leaving the other leg. Which to a certain extent could be a little bit of an underutilization. But for the duration of the period, I would like to give the committee assurance that the CFO function will be fulfilled. Thank you. The bid committee members, we dealt with them, and I think General Mukwena has responded and confirmed that all of them has been vetted. The measures to report corruption, firstly, there's provision from within the organization for whistleblowing, and with the guarantee to protect members, anyone in the organization who sees corruption. But then further to that, there's a Section 34 responsibility, which is tied up to all commanders to make sure that corruption is reported. Then there's an internal toll-free number that is linked to corporate communication. And there's also the presidential hotline. There's provision that is for it to report corruption. So we are using these avenues, but we have just approved the anti-corruption strategy. And there's also the ethics committee which will also be dealing with reports pertaining to corruption and linking them to the anti-corruption strategy. Then the cases of corruption, Chair, with your permission, General Vuma will relate to them.
Acting CFO, you're welcome.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members. It is safe to admit that maybe previously we didn't have measures that were able to assist us in detecting corruption. But part of the contract management strategy seeks to assist us in terms of our implementation plan that we are currently refining, where we will definitely have measures that will assist us internally beside the all other roles that the National Commissioner has just mentioned that will assist us in reporting corruption. We want to have our own internal methodology of detecting corruption before it goes beyond to the situation that we find ourselves in right now. Through the process that are currently going on, we have a number of cases that are currently going on. Some of the members that are directly affected, as and when you serve them with the investigation processes or intention to suspend, they immediately resign. Currently, I think we have, if I'm not mistaken, 4 members that have since resigned. I've just served 3 brigadiers with intentions for investigation for now. I have 1 brigadier that I've also served with an intention to suspend. I'm waiting, I think by Tuesday, she will respond with the representation as our processes prescribe that the person needs to address you on the merit why he or she cannot be suspended. I also have 1 colonel that I also served whom I intended to suspend, who also decided to resign by the end of May. So far, these are the cases, but the investigations are carrying on. As and when they detect anything that relates to any member, the investigating officer submits to me recommendations on the steps that must be initiated. Thank you, Chair.
Vuma, just in a follow-up, you mentioned 3 members who resigned. At what rank level are they?
It's a full colonel, a lieutenant colonel. I think there's a warrant officer and a captain, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you, General Vuma. There's just 2 follow-ups on that presentation. Honorable Mulabatsi, Honorable Mula, you're welcome. Follow-ups.
Thank you, Chairperson. Do you have a way of following them up as they run away?
Honorable Mula.
Thank you, Chairperson. I want to ask you, what if they resigned, what happens to the investigation? Does it fall down or what? And I've got this question that I want to ask General Stoll, the issue of Brigadier Pedley. Last time we were having a portfolio committee with the IPID. I asked IPID that about the Pedley issue, that 50,000. It's a fraud and corruption, that one. And they said you didn't give them the case. You said you are coming back to them. I don't know when are you going to give them, or it doesn't fall under the IPID. But I know that the IPID mandate is to follow the police which are doing the wrong things. That's what I want to know, General. Thank you very much.
Honorable Ramatlakane, also follow up.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Just a small follow-up. I don't want to get in the detail of the suspension or not. Particularly, my question, General, is just the assurance of the process in which the DC takes place and you are able to put a full non-acting CFO. We've been here before around the CFO issue. There have been a lot of problem with double parking. So just that assurance of the time in which you have to deal with it. Departmental issues, because the other issues are longer term issues. But I think clearing the department for me is that assurance time frame for that to happen.
Honorable Ramatlakane. General Sitole, General Vuma.
Yeah, Honorable Chair, the follow-up on the resignations, maybe I will just give the strategic directional part. I've put together a forensic audit investigation team, which we refer to as the investigation value chain. There, we've got IPID, we've got the forensic auditors, the internal audit, and we also have the investigations from Treasury. The majority of the people who have resigned here, they are subject to investigations in terms of the value chain. Yes, then some of them, they appear in the Treasury investigations through the contract. Some of them, they appear within IPID, but also within SAPS, detective is also seconded investigators there from anti-corruption. So they also part and parcel of that particular subject. Now, within the corruption investigation, there's an escalation. The moment you resign, they resort to the asset forfeiture procedures and amongst others, the freezing of the pension and all other benefits until we dispose of the criminal investigations. So those are some of the routes that we're following depending on the seriousness that is of the matter. And those are the instructions that I have issued at that particular angle, but it's a collective approach. I think then General Vuma can follow up, but the issue of PETLA, General Tsumane will respond to it. And I have a suspicion within a week or two, we'll be having new developments on that matter. But maybe we can give General Tsumane first, with your permission, Chair.
National Commissioner, SDNC.
No. Chairperson, no, thank you very much, and honorable members and honorable Mula. The issue of PETLA, I think I said in the past that there were some kind of discrepancies that we had to deal with in terms of the Labor Relations Act, but that was corrected, and then she was suspended. Seeing that she's not alone in the matter, she's got one senior person and 2 junior persons also there, so there are 4 all in all in this matter. She was suspended, but she came back, but investigation in terms of departmental then continued, and it's still underway. In relation to the criminal matter, like the National Commissioner is saying, there's something that might be, I don't want to say when, but I must say that the anti-corruption unit did take that case, and they are at a very advanced stage. Today or tomorrow, anytime soon, the 4 people will be appearing, hopefully in court, because I think the stage at which it is now, I am very, very much satisfied, and then I've thus briefed the National Commission in relation to that. The matter received an attention, and then soon we'll be seeing something in relation to that. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, General. General Vuma, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I think the National Commission has addressed the issues that were raised with regard to the investigations. However, with regards to the processes for finalization in terms of disciplinary processes, we are on time. I think we will be on time in terms of the processes that have been instituted. If I may just highlight on the CFO side that the investigating officer has assured that within this month it shall be concluded, and we have already with legal services set aside, because it's a Lieutenant General, we will need a presiding officer that comes from outside. We have already put the tribunal ready for the process, so that as soon as we receive the report, the tribunal proceed with the processes. And also safe to say, while I'm still on this, General, to add in trying to address the issue that was asked by Honorable Makia with regard to the identification, key deliverable number 2 of the strategy, where we talk of identification of contract and classification. The committee that was alluded in the contract management strategy that I will be chairing also seeks to make sure that the purpose will be for us to be able to continuously look into the contracts that are put in place and evaluate them in terms of their performance, and also to ensure that if there are irregularities that are happening, we are able to detect them as early as possible, and also to ensure that we address the policy of the government, issues of BEE that needs to be taken into consideration, which at this stage they are not as visible as they should. So we seek to ensure that we classify them, we check them, we scrutinize all those contracts, and ensures that where there are problems, we are able to submit certain motivations for PAC to relook as and when they continue with the new contract that they shall be putting in place on behalf of the organization. Thank you very much, Chair.
Uma, there's just an additional question from Honorable Mula.
Yes, Chairperson. On the disciplinary matter, for how long is your disciplinary takes place? Is it 3 months or what? And what happens if it's 3 months, you discipline the person or she's under investigation? What happens if 3 months lapse with that disciplinary case? Thank you.
Honorable Mula, General.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chair. Our disciplinary procedure prescribes that we have 2 months to finalize the process of investigation and ensure that at least a person goes to the hearing between that 2 months. However, if it happens that the process has not yet been finalized within a period of 2 months, but at least maybe the tribunal has started to sit, it provides an extension for 1 month. Thereafter, it should be on the basis of the chairperson, whether they are willing to extend the suspension, depending on the process of the hearing, how it is unfolding. However, once 3 months has been finalized, the person is supposed to be coming back on work. That's why we're trying to ensure that we push it within the prescribed timeframes as provided for in the discipline regulations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Let's go to the other responses. Thank you, General Sitole.
Yeah, thanks, Honorable Chair. Yeah, just on this one, it's just to add to say it depends on the complexity of the case, because some of them, they get complicated by lawyers as they come in, and then we follow that. Then, Honorable Chair, with your permission, General Mokoena will respond to the publishing of tenders as well as the review of the bid committee awarded.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, honorable members. Yes, our bids, all of them are advertised through State Tender Board Bulletin, through government printers, and also on our website. Only when the need arises, we go to all the national newspapers. Thank you. Now, in a case where a tender is awarded and bidders experience some dissatisfaction or are not satisfied, what they normally do, they will write to supply chain management and indicate their dissatisfaction. But what we normally do, because we awarded the bid, we advise them maybe, if possible, to liaise with National Treasury, to lay a complaint with National Treasury. But at the same time, we keep a register where all complaints and dissatisfaction raised by bidders, where we register them for audit purposes, and we normally refer them to a National Treasury. Or we advise them maybe to follow a legal process. Currently, there is no committee where we can sit and reverse the decision of the BEC. but that is what we are doing. Thanks, Honorable Chairman.
Thank you very much. General Sitole.
Yeah, thanks, Honorable Chair. We will look at this mechanism within the contract management strategy so that it is provided for. Then, Honorable Chair, consequence management on irregular expenditure. We are guided by Section 34 of the Public Finance Management Act, and we escalate Section 34 to Section 81(2), financial misconduct investigation. And at the present moment, we have linked Section 81(2) to the discipline regulations, which then means if there's irregular expenditure, someone will always be held accountable because it's from Section 44 to 34, then to 81. But if that has also amounted to a discipline misconduct, we also activate the regulation. Then, Honorable Chair, General Mokoena will just respond on the PPP compliance.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. Yes, all our bids, be it advertisement, be it award, are governed by this Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act. And the Auditor General and our internal audit us in terms of this PPPFA. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members.
Thanks very much, Honorable Chair. Firstly, we would like to welcome and appreciate the commendation by Honorable Make. And just also to indicate, I'm sure the centralization approach, Chair, has depleted capacity at grassroots level. And as we bring in the contract management strategy, we also coupled it with capacity building at grassroots level. And then again, there has been a dealing between your budgetary planning process and your contract management. You will be having existing contracts, but the budgetary planning does not respond to these particular contracts. Now, when you have to execute the contracts, the budget doesn't allow it. And part and parcel of the instruction that I've given and what is also reflected in the contract management strategy is the alignment of your contract management to your budgetary planning that is exercised. Now, firstly, your budget concept is going to reflect which of the contracts you're going to be servicing in the next financial year, and together with the response to the situational demand and your client demand. And I've also related to the modus operandi. And this same question escalate to the concern raised by Honorable Mbele. Maybe there's a number of issues or areas there where we just have to give open and honest answers. Yeah, I think firstly, while we're dealing with the contract management strategy, the organization also did not have an integrated resource management strategy for several years. Now, for you to get your contract outputs on the ground, your resource management strategy must relate to the availability and alignment of your resource metrics so that when you discharge the one contract, the other contracts as well as your other provisions of your procurement management should relate on the dependency resources that you also need that are dependent on the output of the contract. And I will give this example. It's like acquiring a computer, but you don't have data line capacity. And now, if you want to invoke the contract that gives you the computer, you must have activated the one that deals with your data line capacity, and there's always the one that should come before the other. And your resource matrix deals with that, but within your resource management strategy. But I also want then to confirm to the committee that the resource management strategy has also been fully designed and is now running concurrently with the contract management strategy. Then again, on the ground, one of the observations is that we did not necessarily apply the participative management concept, which has also been introduced through the turnaround strategy. What I'm talking here to the committee must be understood by the constable on the ground. And one of the intentions of the turnaround, it's for me to be understood by the constables when they watch me on TV talking to the portfolio committee. If I talk to a strategy, I want the constables to understand that on the ground. But I've started that particular process, and at one stage was acknowledged by the chair. I've introduced the turnaround vision roadshow, where I go with the executive and talk to management about this vision and what does it mean to the constables? What does these strategies mean to the police station? What is the role of the station commander? What is the role of the cluster commander? And how do we run the organization together? How do we capture their ideas? Because there's some of those constables who have got more brilliant ideas than myself. And how do we capture them? How do we create that space for them? So that vision roadshow is still continuing. It started here in the Western Cape. We're going to be rounding all the 9 provinces. But after all, there's also avenues that they are working on from corporate communication for me to interact with all the members across the country, where we can talk about this. Further to that, the localization of the strategic direction. I think now with the turnaround, I said to the steering committee that we spoke about yesterday, I think it's General Zumane, Libya, and Masemul. I said, let them go to the ground and let them monitor whether what we say here, is it happening? And if it is not happening, they must take action against the commanders, but guide the junior ones. And therefore, it's going to be a process, but it's a process on which we will continue to be hands-on, but we need to change it. Is a mindset, and is also a perception, but it's also transformation, because it talks to your white paper, your 1998 white paper on transforming public service delivery. So we will work on it, and we also accept this as an input, and we will also further accept any further input. Then on the cluster commander, Honorable Chair, this question is very interesting because the Honorable Member in her last statement said, you know, this cluster thing, but I was trying to, you get the same from the unions, you also get the same question from some of us, from some of our members. But I have also issued a directive to the work study to say, if we come up with a structure, a new structure, we must pilot it first. And after the pilot, we must get a review report and check whether is this structure supporting effective policing. If it doesn't, we must review it. All right, it's not been happening as a practice before, it's now introduced, it's gonna be happening. I might not relate much on the cluster commander at the present moment because we are actually reviewing the concept with the migration of resources. So we will be able to come back and say, this is the reviewed approach, and this is how we're moving forward with the cluster commander. Our principal approach and our objective is that we want capacity at the police stations, and we want stations to function 10 times more than the clusters. That's where we're going. We'll be able to come back to the committee after the migration process. We're still working together with unions now. On Friday, we've got a workshop with them, and the matter will be escalated to the SABC. We just make sure that we follow the labor process correctly, but we are going to run it first as a 12-month pilot so that we don't make the same mistake. Thank you, Chair.
I think that's all the responses. I've got just one issue in terms of the contract concept, and I think General Wuma also referred to that. The concept of evergreen contracts. Contracts running for decades and without proper assessment and linking to budget plans. Are you also assessing that also the issues you've raised, the areas of concern and current investigations, are you also looking at that? Other members, I just want to get indication, members, Honourable Mbele, Honourable Ramatlakane, that's the final round, I think.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the Commissioner and the team for the responses. I do heartily welcome the Commissioner's indication of the measures and changes being put in place to improve effectiveness against the backdrop of the concessions of what had been mismanagement and non-application of what should have been the basics. So I think the committee will track that going forward. But just maybe one exhortation, which the Commissioner will remember me saying before, but I think it's relevant to this theme, and then also a question. The first is to perhaps remind the Commissioner and the team that there is a whole ecosystem of entities and mechanisms that can and do support and lighten the load of SAPS management when it comes to monitoring, oversights, and having a finger on the pulse. You've got the Secretariat, and through it, operating through the provincial secretariats, who do a whole host of oversight and monitoring and generate reports and feed information like the policing needs and priorities reports that can then link to your budget planning and strategy reviews and so on. You've got, at station level, you've got the CPFs, and I have heard smatterings here and there where the experience of CPFs is that station management is resistant to their inputs, to their participation, and to the value add they can bring, because they are the link to communities. At least some of their members are people who are doing the voluntary patrolling and can then tell you, hey, that hotspot's, behind this green belts, that's an issue. And then Vispol can then proactively be part of a solution. So using those other stakeholders and having a partnership policing approach. And I think that's an idea that must filter through all the levels, and will certainly assist the Commissioner and his team in their work to use the inputs and the insights that other role players do have. So I just want to put that back on the table. But my question, Chair, is in terms of both the examples we heard about the members who are already starting to be, call them, purged out the system. I know there's this word that comes in every now and then that becomes du jour when we talk about purification and that sort of thing. But basically, enforcing accountability and cleaning out the SAPS. Could we get an indication of where the majority of the problems seem to reside in terms of those three bands that General Mkwena outlined? So is most of the fiddling happening in that sub 300K category, the between 300 and 500, or upwards of 500? Because I can guess at which band is more vulnerable to fiddling, but obviously the temptation to fiddle would be at the higher levels because that's where the bigger sums of money are. So has there been an analysis of that? Because that'll help to guide and shape a way of tackling it. Thanks, Chair.
Honourable Bailey, Honourable Ramatlakane, and then Honourable Mulabatsi.
No, thank you, Honourable Chair. It's just a one question, and I'm sure it may have been answered earlier in a different form. But what I want to understand in general is the relationship between yourself, which is the Department of Police, as well as the Department of Public Works, with regard to the needs and accommodation issues in terms of your specification and in terms of what they offer. In the past, we have gone over this discussion that your request is not necessarily met with the same specification. You are given what is available, or sometimes you are even directed to take anything that is available. Now, the question I want to ask is whether that relationship and that understanding that the police needs are not just like any other department's needs in terms of the accommodations, particularly on leasing. What comes to mind, that's why I'm talking about this issue, is the famous Free State VIP building that has gone for probably over 2 years or without resolution. Whether that relationship has been sorted out. And I can remember both Generals Tolle at some point dealt with this, and then General Mukwena and everybody. So I'm asking that question, whether that relationship has now been sorted out, is now everybody understand your needs and they comply accordingly. And if whether this albatross of the Free State and the Free State properties, giants are now able to solve this problem. That's really just my one question, Chair. Thank you.
Just on that issue, I think we discussed it at a previous meeting, and I've also talked to the new chair of Public Works, so we'll have a joint meeting when we come back, you know, but the General is also welcome to give his input. Honourable Molabatsi.
Thanks, Chair. When I was talking about the cluster commanders, I'm not referring to it should be done away with. I'm merely saying it must be capacitated and it should have teeth. That's all I was saying. Thanks, Chair.
Members, any other questions on the presentations and input? Thank you, members. General.
Yeah, thanks, Honorable Chair. I will first allow General Mukwena to take the first bite on the Evergreen contracts.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, honorable members. Honorable Chair and honorable members, you know, this thing has been going on for years. We fully agree. But with the new contract management strategy that the National Commissioner is bringing in, he's going to lay off this burden on the Divisional Commissioner Supply Chain Management because it will have more power now. And in this committee that I'll be reporting, they'll be able to say, you know, to the members, the head of acquisition, myself, and everybody who's involved in this procurement process, to ask and say, but why is this contract evergreen? What is the problem? We will be able to suggest to the committee, for example, if I may go back to the example that I gave earlier, forensic, for example, where you find that machines were deliberately bought, and locally you have only specific DNA kits that matches that are compatible to that machine, and nobody else. Now, with that kind of a committee put in place, it weighs more weight. We'll be able to say, discard those machines. Let's sell them at an auction, or so that we bring in the machines that will accommodate multiple sources of service providers. That, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, I'm excited because the National Commissioner has established this committee, which I'll be able to report to, which will give me more power to say this thing must stop. We cannot forever have one contract running for 15 years, the one that I gave, for example, previously. It's not the only one. You have a number of them that have been running, but it's so difficult if it's a one-man show without the help of the executive of the organization. And I'm excited, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, we hope you are going to address that.
So we've got a commitment that all those evergreen contracts will be properly evaluated.
With your permission, Chair, General Vuma wants to add.
Thank you very much, Chair. We have actually started the process where we, especially those end users that have got a lot of them called sole suppliers, I've given them directives that they need to go and check and evaluate in terms of the market and research the market, whether, why can we say this is a sole supplier? Or is this, maybe when it started at a time, it might have been a sole supplier, but the market has since grown. Maybe we have such other suppliers within South Africa that are delivering the same services that we are currently saying they are the sole suppliers. So the process has already started, and we're saying we'll also, where there are maybe some challenges, we'll also involve the end users, because to assist us in terms of market research, so that before we finalize or we carry on, we are able to, we are convinced that we are on the right track. We are not going to repeat what has been the norm within the South African Police Services, where we are advantaging some of the suppliers at the expense of the total market that is out today. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Honorable Chair. Yeah, maybe, yeah, also adding, we thought this lifetime principle is within the political environment where you have lifetime presidents, but here we've seen lifetime suppliers. So, so I think that's what we want to put to an end with a contract management strategy. But two, there's also government policy changes in the process. If your contracts do not adapt to that, then it means government is not going to achieve the implementation of that policy. So therefore, the contract management strategy needs to be flexible and follow the direction that government is giving. So here there's been several government policy changes. Among others, it's the economic empowerment of the disadvantaged. Yeah, but then this process did not allow that to take place because it was a little bit of the law of the jungle, survival of the fittest, because the bigger suppliers, when the smaller one came, what we also find is that the bigger one bought the status of the others. Then you find 21 companies, all of them one owner, one director. So I think that's how, but then I also want to repeat again that contracts must respond to modus operandi. If the modus operandi bypass the contractual output, I think we need to review that particular contract. It's no longer helping us to improve policing. Then, Chair, on the CPFs, I think firstly would like to buy the input by the honorable member and just say, I think even yesterday I spoke about the operationalization of the community policing strategy. In the community policing strategy, that platform is provided. And we are now in a process of implementing it, but part and parcel of implementing the strategy, which is a principle which with all strategies, we start from the performance management alignment. We're going to be saying to station commanders, it's not a discretion. It's an obligation, it's a performance obligation. And we're also going to measure it. So first we're gonna enforce it through the performance management system, but we're also going to enforce it through the monitoring and evaluation of the strategy with that is role definition. But also the development and upgrading of community policing, which relate to the CPFs, will also be talking to the strategy. And finally, on the same, we're also shifting CPFs away firstly from what you could call politics or petty budget and resource complaints. We're shifting them to community policing, and we're going to fund community policing so that they're able to implement. So I think that particular strategy will not take long to also make a turn to the portfolio committee. and we'll make sure that this is implemented.
Honourable Bailey.
Thanks, Chair. Just a very quick and small, quick and small but important caution and perhaps advice to the Commissioner. I think I do welcome that there'll be financial support to CPFs, but can I ask, please, fund activities, not positions. If you fund positions, it's going to turn into petty factional fights for access to positions to get money, but you must fund activities, so people must work in order to tap into the funds. Yeah.
Thanks very much for the input. I'm going to fund community policing through crime prevention. So the budget will be allocated to crime prevention, and crime prevention will prioritize community policing activities. We take the advice, is the same principle. And then, Chair, I would, with your permission, allow General Mkwena to respond on where the problem lies in terms of the bans, the biggest problem. Is it within the 500, the categories? Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members. It is true what Honourable Mbele has said. In the past, national supply chain management didn't have a say insofar as the delegation of provincial commissioner is concerned. What they did there in terms of supply chain management, it was on their own. But what the national commissioner has brought about now, he says in terms of the metrics of our resources, even if the requirement are less than 300,000, they must be communicated to national supply chain management. The importance of doing this, let me give an example what happened previously. A budget will be given to the provincial commissioner maybe for bulletproof vests, but it has been since centralized. Instead of directing that resources to get that bulletproof resistant vest or handcuff, you'll find it elsewhere now, because they did not submit their procurement plan in terms of the delegation that has been given to them. But with a new procurement strategy, they will be forced now, and we will have control of that. So we will be able to ensure that the provincial commissioner does not just utilize funds allocated to him or her as she pleases or as he pleases, but will be saying to her, no, but there is a shortage of, for example, tires or furniture. So instead of utilizing these funds for party, for example, year-end function, buy furniture. I don't know if I answered Honourable Mbele.
Honourable Bailey?
Yes, I'm partly answered, Chair. There's just the more analytical part of my question, and if they don't have the info, that's fine. But it was just to, also asking about where has been the majority of the fiddling between those bands, and I'm talking number of incidents, not necessarily the value of the irregularities.
Maybe if you don't got it now, General, we can get it in writing, but is that fine, Honourable Bailey? Thank you very much. General Zitole, you've got something still to add?
No, thanks. It's just the last question about the relationship with Public Works. I think let me start by saying it's good, but I'm not sure whether it is not at personal level. I actually wanted also to relate on the comment by Honourable Maki, and we're not sure how we can be assisted. I think firstly we would be prepared to share the strategy as a best practice if it so become. But the fact that we're going to adopt this strategy, it's going to expose more wrongs with other dependency public sector stakeholders, public works being the number one. Because one of the situations that we want to change here is to minimize the national security risk through contract management. But now I must then say to the committee that we've got leased police stations. A police station that is under lease has got a national security risk. And you've got buildings that are occupied by CI and DPCI under lease. Now, with the contract management strategy, we want to down manage the lease, and then so that we can increase the sovereignty of the state. Yeah, because we also have a situation that occurred in KZN. The lease, the owner locked the offices, so the dockets and quite a lot of other face value documents, including equipments, they were locked in the building. The lease owner has got the keys. The detectives are outside. And there's murder dockets, there's dockets that talks to drugs, and so you can just understand the level of the risk. So if maybe Public Works would be having a similar mechanism, like us, we could then be able to relate, because to them, if we say we want to down manage the lease that is contracts, to them that's not a priority, and they see no problem. Yes, so, but when we speak to them, the level of cooperation is high, but the understanding of the security risks is below zero. Hence, they treat us as normal. But we will also even go to an extent of presenting the strategy to them, and also outline to them what we intend to achieve and how they can assist and support us. But they are our biggest dependency also on contract management, and CETA is second. So I think we will relate on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members. We're coming to the end of this part of the agenda. We've still got one item left. I want to thank the National Commissioner and his team. We welcome the fact that there is a procurement strategy and a contract management strategy now in place. It's quite important. SAPS again receives 11% of the national budget. And you've got 52,000 vehicles. And you must provide equipment for nearly 200,000 people. So it's a big allocation, and of course the importance of preference procurement is quite critical going forward, but we also welcome the fact that the National Commissioner is cleaning up the environment. The disciplinary steps that's been taken against even people at Lieutenant General level. We take note of the appointment of an acting CEO, but I think as Honourable Ramadakane indicated, we need a solution to that going forward, but of course we will allow the processes to follow, and also the new structure. But it's important that there is stability in that environment. We will, of course, monitor the situation going forward. Thank you very much. We'll give an opportunity for the General and his team to leave, and then we'll just ask the Chair of the SAPS Transformation Task Team, Reverend Vukele Meane, and his team just to join us. Thank you. Thank you very much, colleagues. We will just give an opportunity for the Reverend to introduce his team, and then we will go to the brief summary of the current activities. You're welcome.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, honorable members. I am Reverend Dr. Vukile Mehana, the Chair of the Ministerial SAPS Transformation Task Team. Next to me is Mr. Stephen Chabalala, who is the Project Management Officer.
Thank you very much, Reverend. I will just ask the members to introduce themselves. Thank you.
Good day, I'm Enji Mulibati. Thanks.
Good day, I'm Leonard Ramatlakani, is my name, member of the committee.
Hi, I'm Diane Kolobana, member of the committee.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Zakhele Mbele, a member of the committee.
Thank you very much. Members, the aim of the engagement is not for a long, power presentation. We've indicated that we want them to come back in August with a comprehensive breakdown, but just to give us, before we break, because there's going to be now a 2 months lull, just to give us an indication, what is the progress been so far since the handover of the international task team, and what is the current focus areas, and that's really what we want on record. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and honorable members. As honorable members will know, the background to this Ministerial Transformation Task Team is informed by the events of Marikana and the outcome of the report that Judge Fallon gave to us. And two important developments out of that report were the appointment of the international panel of experts, including some of our police officers. And secondly was the appointment of the Ministerial SAPS Transformation Task Team to mainly focus on the police and environment of working and looking at national instructions, orders, policies, procedures, including their training and preparedness to be effective police in South Africa. So we have been working since 2016, but we have had some constraints here and there in terms of the administrative support and financial budget matters. And also to that effect, the turnover of ministers has not been very supportive to our speed of trying to get into grips with this huge work. But as the Honorable Chair said, up to this point, we as a committee, we've been able to develop a strategy as to how we're going to deal with this matter. We've been able to crystallize Instruction 2016 as to ensure that we've got the proper terms of reference as to how we're going to approach this work. And also we have managed up to this point to join the panel of experts team that visited Russia last November, where we were looking at the benchmarking exercise on the public order policing. So now, with our new minister, who has taken this responsibility with all the passion and enthusiasm, what has happened now, he has reviewed the membership of this task team, which is now more beefed up with the people from civil society, reduced a bit from the police, so that they can make sure that we don't fall in a trap where police are transforming themselves. So now we've got more civil people from various areas of the civil society forming part of this transformation task team. And that work is now ready to be taking off with all the enthusiasm and the passion of the new minister. We will request Honorable Chair and Honorable Members that we come back in August with a fully fledged presentation as to how we are now kicking off this work with the direction and the leadership of the new minister.
Do your colleague has got anything to add? Yeah. So if there's questions, I just want to know the final report of the international panel, has that been handed over to you? And maybe if you can just expand on the new members of civil society, if you've got the detail. Honourable Kodabana and Honourable.
Sorry, maybe I misheard. Did you say that you and your team went to Russia to look at public order policing? We're taking advice from Russia on that.
Thank you. Honourable Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just be reminded as to the location of the transformation task team in the wider police portfolio ecosystem? Because last I remember, the task team was sort of resided within the deputy minister's purview, and that's still the same. If we can just get the clarity. And then just to find out what the link is, given that structural location, the link with the civilian secretariat, because the secretariat has obviously now produced the 2 white papers, which are going to feed into the whole transformation discussion, the SAPS transformation discussion. There's obviously also the backdrop of the NDP, and as the chair has said before, a big part of the idea is that this will all culminate in the SAPS amendments bill process. And I'm worried that, as tends to be the case in government, when you've got all these different trains on the go, they're going to end up on tracks that go in different directions. So I'm just keen to find out if there's a plan around what the central hub is for holding and aligning and harmonizing all of those processes and all of those discussions. And I suppose maybe a speculation as to whether or not that shouldn't ultimately reside in the secretariat itself as the policy making, policy advisory, policy making and policy advisory body in the police portfolio, given that through its monitoring and oversights, it can then also feed that into how the planning and the review processes proceed going forward. And also the fact that I assume the SAPS amendment bill will be birthed by the secretariat. I'm just giving an early caution around alignment, harmonization, and a central place where everything gathers. And so, for example, once the task team is dissolved, when it achieves the ends of its terms of reference, will that content then be transferred to the secretariat to then carry forward? Thanks, Chair.
Very much. I thought, Honourable Bachi, you didn't raise your hand. Honourable Ramatlakane.
No, thank you very much. I think we welcome the fact that by August we will then see a fuller picture of the transformation task team. And of course, the doctor said it has been reconfigured to make sure that it's not dominated. I think it's a good thing to do. But I didn't say what's the ratio of configured. How is it configured in terms of balancing it out, and is it still be driven? The last time it was driven by the deputy minister. Is it still driven by the deputy minister, the task team? So that's really, for me, the 2 things. That's the one, how it's configured in terms of weighting of that, and whether it still be driven by the deputy minister.
Members, that's the questions. Thank you very much. Let's get the response.
Firstly, on the question of the work of the panel of experts, that work has now been concluded, and that report has been handed over to the minister and the deputy minister. And it has quite a number of recommendations that are transformational that are finding their way to our task team. So that work, in fact, part of the delay in getting the full swing, we were waiting for that work to also to be completed. Secondly, just as well deal with the configuration of the of the task team. The task team is now having myself as a completely independent person, not being part of any of the two configurations, which was not the case previously. I was part of the non-police people, but that has been taken out now to be totally independent. Secondly, we have about 6 members who now come from the civilian society. Out of 12, there are now 6 members coming out of the civilian society, plus myself, that is 7. And then we have about 4 senior generals. One of the generals is the generally responsible for public order policing, and one of the generals is from legal, and one of the generals comes from the personnel. And also previously, the deputy chair of this committee was one of the generals, General Mugwenya. That now has been changed. It's now one of the civil society people. So both the chair and the deputy chair are now, no police is involved. And also we have some people who came from the panel of experts for continuity, so that there can be better understanding as to, from those recommendations point of view, they could also be there. And also Judge Njangase, who was the chairperson of the panel of experts, he's got a standing invitation per the minister's directive, so that we can call on him as and when we believe that we need his guidance on that. Then we've got the unions from the 2 major unions of the police, from I think South African Police Union and POPCRU. But they've got full participation, but no voting on the panel. So that is how it has been. It is tremendously changed from what it was before. With regard to Russia, no, honorable member, we did not initiate that. That was part of the work of the panel of experts, because they had to do some benchmarking in various countries. Myself and the administrator were just invited to accompany them. So we did not initiate it. It was not part of the transformation task team program. It was just invited that as they, in terms of their work, they were going to visit various countries to do benchmarking on public order policing. They just said it will make sense, because at some point we'll be involved in the implementation of their recommendations, that the 2 of us, we joined them.
Chair, if I may, could I have a follow-up? I was just very surprised, because previously this committee had looked at exactly that. In fact, this committee was at one stage planning a trip to look at public order policing, the best, international best practice, and the determination was France and the UK had the best global systems on how to manage a crowd with the least possible disruption and without blocking people's right to protest, but at the same time protecting property and others. So I was a bit surprised that you would look to Russia, of all places, for crowd control information. But if they have indeed visited other countries, then it makes sense. I thought it was a once-off, so hence my surprise.
Yeah, maybe just I remember the original panel of experts. There was representatives from all the BRICS countries as well. Yeah, maybe that's the context. Yes, you're welcome to respond.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. With regard to the question of the involvement of the Secretariat, one of the new inventions with the reviewed membership now. Previously, we were expected to have appointed an independent program management person to help us with administration. But with this reinvigoration now, what has happened is that we have taken out a representative of the Secretariat who previously was part of the membership. And the directive from the minister is that now the Secretariat becomes now the key provider of the administration of the task team. And the PMO, the Project Management Office, will reside in the Civil Secretariat, and they will be responsible for all our administration. They will be responsible for ensuring that we deliver on our work. So it is now, while it still resides in the office of the Deputy Minister, but the actual administration, it is residing now in the civil in the Civil Secretariat, and I'm sure precisely because of the reasons the honourable member has articulated, so that as we move on, there will be this synergy that at the end of our tenure, that work will continue from the civil society point of view.
Much, Reverend. Yeah. For the update, it's quite important that we get this update, because in terms of our planning for Q3, it's important that we include you in the work, because also members will remember that our meeting on the NDP progress of all three institutions falling under us also fell away. So we'll also have to link that. So thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it. We'll then see in August. Honourable members, we've come then to the end of this meeting. Maybe just to indicate that we will meet in 2 weeks' time at the end of June. We'll start on that Thursday. And we will also try to deal with our outstanding work on the Critical Infrastructure Protection Bill. So we will also try and slot that in, maybe on the first day in the afternoon. Because remember, there's still the outstanding issue of the legal opinion and that one chapter. So we need to deal with that. At this stage, we plan for 5 days, but that's a very liberal planning. If we are efficient and we deal quite appropriately with the relevant pieces of legislation, we can make good progress, and we don't have to maybe necessarily use all the days. But so it depends on the cooperation of the members. I know members who's got other duties. It's constituency period as well. Yeah, that's great. It's a Thursday and a Friday. Yeah, as I said, those are also part of the plan currently, but it depends on the progress. It depends on the number of submissions we get. It depends on the... Yes, no, we're going to sit there. You will see in the program. Yeah. No, it will be full days. As I said, in the first day, in the afternoon session, we want to deal with the critical infrastructure. We maybe can get all the public input on that first morning and start with our deliberations after that. So we'll utilize the time effectively. So members must plan for the whole day. So thank you very much, honourable members. This meeting is closed. Thank you.